Welcome to Shattered Reality with your hosts Kate Valentine and Fahrusha. Prepare to have your paradigms shifted and your truths questioned. And now, Shattered Reality.
Well, hello, Shattered Reality listeners. Today is Abraham Lincoln's birthday. Don't ask me which one because I don't know. This is Fahrusha here, and I have a very special show for you today. Like the last show, we have two guests at once, but in this case, these two guests co-wrote a wonderful book. But let me slate first a little bit about what's going on here. It is February 12th, 2019, and this is show number 83. 8 and 3 adds up to 11, which is a wonderful magic number. And unfortunately, again today, our very distinguished co-host, Kate Valentine, will not be with us, but we're looking forward to her coming back to us in the very near future. Now, our two guests today wrote, as I say, a wonderful book. And to me, I've read the book thoroughly. I could probably reread certain sections, but the book is called A is for Adamski. The subtitle is The Golden Age of the UFO Contactees, and there are other people who have contributed a little bit to the book, but we're not going to go into that right now. So what I want to do is introduce Mr. Greg Bishop and Mr. Adam Gorightly to Shattered Reality Podcast. And Greg is somebody who in 1991 co-founded a magazine called The Excluded Middle, which was a journal of UFOs, conspiracy research, psychedelia, and new science. Wake Up Down There, a collection of articles from the magazine, was published in the year 2000 by Adventures Unlimited Press. Greg's second book was Project Beta, and we did have him on talking about Project Beta some time ago. Project Beta is the story of Paul Benowitz, national security, and the creation of a UFO myth, of a modern UFO myth, actually. He also wrote Weird California, a portrait of strange and eerie history and places in the Golden State, which was released in 2006. From December 2007 to November 2011, Greg blogged for the UFO and paranormal site UFO Mystic. His 2017 book, It Defies Language, was composed for the most part of entries from that blog. Now, coming more to the present day, his current show is Radio Misterioso and can be heard live at radiomisterioso.com. So, let's add he is licensed to fly aerial drones for commercial clients, and he's also a certified paraglider, better him than me, and an ultralight pilot. He owns a private pilot license. Our other illustrious guest, Mr. Adam Gorightly, for 2 decades, his articles have appeared in nearly every zine, underground magazine, countercultural publication, and conspiratorial website imaginable. Well, maybe imaginable. I could imagine things. His landmark work, The Shadow over Santa Susana, Black Magic, Mind Control, and the Manson Family Mythos, which was published both in 2001 and updated in 2009, is considered by some the most comprehensive book on the Tate LaBianca murders. In The Prankster and the Conspiracy, the story of Kerry Thornley and how he met Oswald and inspired the counterculture, Gorightly examines the remarkable life of Kerry Thornley, a 1960s Zen radical and founder of the spoof religion Discordianism, who was quite realistically being groomed as a Lee Harvey Oswald patsy double. And he has a lot more credits to his name, including Happy Trails to High Weirdness, James Shelby's Downward Mystical War, The Beast of Adam Gorightly. And he makes some mention of J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye, which may have been used as a control mechanism to trigger mind-numbed Manchurian candidates. I got to ask him about that. But mostly, we're going to talk about A is for Adamski. So please, out there in podcast land, put your hands together and welcome to our show, Adam Gorightly and Greg Bishop. Hello, guys. How's it going?
Greetings, Earthling.
Greetings. Well,
ditto.
Over here on the East Coast, it is snowing unbelievably, and I risked life and limb to get here, so I hope my trip to the studio, you appreciate that my dedication to the UFO phenomena.
Hey, we got snow in California, too. I got snow at my house.
Really?
Yeah.
I live in L.A., so there's no. You came and visited.
Yes, I did. Yeah. It was very, very satisfying to meet you personally, Greg, I must say. And who knows?
Oh, likewise.
Someday I might meet Gorightly as well. So,
indeed,
the book which I have here, I love it. It is so fun. It is like the most fun UFO book I've ever read. And I can say that beyond the shadow of a doubt. I've read a lot of interesting UFO books and UFO books that have made me question my sanity as well as the sanity of the authors. But this one is just plain fun. What it is, if I might, it's a collection of very short, like anywhere from 1 to 4 page essays on the various different contactees. Now, how many did you put in here, guys?
I think it's around 100.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, we go and it starts from A and it goes all the way to like W, I think. Let me look on.
Yeah, to George Hunt Williamson.
Yeah,
Right.
we didn't find any Z's.
Well,
there may be an X. There are no Q's. Let's see.
Q's. I don't think there are any X's either, but I've got it right in front of me, and it doesn't say any X's. It goes.
I wish I had it in front of me. That was real stupid.
Well,
I'm gonna remember what the hell I wrote.
Well, there are a lot of people here that are rather disparate. In some ways, a lot of the people that you mention are involved with the Standing Rock crowd, people that went out there in the 50s and met with George Adamski and crew at the Giant Rock. But then there are other people thrown in. What were your parameters?
Did we have any?
Yeah, we did.
Our parameters was what we thought was interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I kind of put some parameters at the beginning that we wanted to draw a distinction between contactees and abductees, although there is some overlap in the book. It's hard to avoid that. And in the introduction, kind of set some parameters just for the heck of it. Just so we wouldn't get too crazy with, you could go on and on with different contactees, but the parameters were from 1952 when Adamski had his sighting to 1978 when George VanTassel died. And that wasn't set in stone. And, there's a few that are outside of that dates, but that was kind of the basic parameters.
Sweet spot, yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed that there were some people from earlier than the 1950s, but I don't fault you on that. They were interesting as well. Not too many later.
That was Greg's fault.
No fault.
Yeah, it's all. Well, yeah, in the intro, we covered some of that. Then as it was evolving, Greg would say, hey, how about we had this person or that person? I'm not going to say, no, damn it. these are my parameters. I know he added. Oh gosh, the name escapes me now from the spiritualism days. Greg, the lady who went to
woman.
Mars.
Yeah, a woman from around 1900.
Catherine Mueller, the India to the Planet Mars woman.
Yes, that was interesting. I liked her. So,
well, I think we had Blavatsky in there too, because that counts, and that's way before. Well, not way before.
You don't have
Blavatsky.
Do you have Blavatsky?
Oh,
no,
I guess we don't.
No, don't have Madame Blavatsky.
Blavatsky is in the introduction.
Yeah.
Right. And Pelley's in there too, I believe, and he's a little bit before the contactee era as well. William Dudley Pelley.
Greg, which one is your favorite of this group of individuals?
I don't know. I keep saying the same one. Maybe I should. I don't know if I should get away from it. But there's two. They both happen to be women. Okay. One is Molly Thompson, who wrote an entire record album about contact with space brothers.
The British lady. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was called From Worlds Afar. I actually found one online, so I've got an actual vinyl copy.
Oh, wow.
On I think it's on Asteroid Records or Saturn Records or something.
I think it's
like
Asteroid. I read this. Yeah. It was towards the end, so I read it more recently than the ones towards the beginning, and I have a better memory of it. And it was Asteroid Records.
Yeah.
So you should play that sometime on Radio Misterioso. What do you think?
I have. I actually have. I should play more of it. I have a weird music show on WFMU too, and on their pod station. I am actually playing my UFO record and recording collection over a series of a bunch of shows. I think I've done 2 or 3 now, and I've got somewhere near 100 recordings of flying saucer and UFO songs. So Molly Thompson comprises about however many were on her album. I think she had 8 or 10 songs, which were amazing. And my other favorite was Paulina Peavy.
Yes.
Who I discovered recently too. And she was an artist. She was born in 1900 and died in 1999, I believe. And she said that she had contacted some being she called Lacaimo, I think.
Yes.
There's a picture of Lacaimo in the book that she drew. She was an amazing artist, and she had kind of a difficult life up to when she just decided, look, I'm just going to live life on my own terms, and I don't care what anybody thinks, and I don't care what people say. And at that point, I think her creativity exploded. There's a recording of her on Long John Nebel actually channeling whatever beings that she was in contact with. It's pretty dramatic recording. She just kind of bangs on the table, and her voice changes into this low, deep voice. And then at the end, she kind of says, and that's what happens when they contact me. And she wore a mask that she designed herself while she was doing the channeling, because she said it helped her do her artwork and do her and contact the space, whoever that space person was, Lacaimo, that she said was helping her throughout her life. So, that to me was a fascinating story. And I found, a lot of, since she lived in Los Angeles for a while, I was able to find a good deal of information on her.
Well, that is, she was very, very, very interesting, because was she the one who got, who had cancer and cured herself, or was cured by the situation? Or am I conflating her with another individual, another woman?
I think it's somebody else.
Yeah, I think you're talking about Dorothy Martin of the.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is just to go off what I had planned to do for a second, change up my order of thoughts here. The idea that some of these individuals, more than one, were sick, particularly, I think 2 of the individuals, at least maybe 3, had cancer that was cured. What do you ascribe that to? Take that, either one of you.
Well, I've been talking a lot. Maybe it's Adam's turn.
I don't know if I have an answer to that, but perhaps, that's Dorothy Martin's belief in something cured her of cancer. She, as I recall this story, was diagnosed with cancer pretty early on, during the period of her when she started channeling different Venusian masters or entities that she thought were Jesus, or perhaps Jesus from Venus, and you could call it a cult or a saucer group or kind of a religious movement that gathered around her that was chronicled in the book When Prophecy Fails of her group. I'm forgetting the name of that group now. Do you remember, Greg?
Etherean, was it, or not?
No, I don't remember the name of the group.
There was one with an A and one with an E. One of them was Ethereans, and one of them was a similar name that started with an A, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. Well, there was the Aetherius Society, but that has nothing to do with Dorothy Martin or Marion Keech or whatever her name is. That was and Charles Lafayette was in there, and God, I can't remember. Although it's funny because that group actually went down to South America later with George Hunt Williamson and tried to start another branch. Yeah, in Peru. Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking at the I Am Society. Was Dorothy Martin was with I Am for a while, and then she went with some other group here. She made some other group. Oh, the Mount Shasta stuff. She became Sister Thedra. The Association of Sananda and Samat Kumara. Oh, that's quite exotic, isn't it?
Well, she had a lot going on. I brought up her association. The name of the group was the Seekers. Now it finally came to me. Yeah, and they had predicted through Dorothy Martin that a flood was coming of the Great Lakes, and that it would reveal the lost continent of Atlantis and things like these. So there was some panic around the Chicago area that the town of Oak Park, which is near really like a suburb outside of Chicago, was going to be submerged. And they developed this belief system that the Space Brothers were going to come and rescue them. And when the prophesied flood never came and the saucer landing never happened, it kind of brought on a lot of reaction from the local people in town that they, pushed back against Dorothy Martin's group. And Charles Lawhead, as Greg mentioned, was part of that group, and that led to the book When Prophecy Fails by a couple of anthropologists that kind of embedded themselves or infiltrated to the group. That's a pretty interesting study. And you talk about the cancer. Dorothy Martin, at the time she was diagnosed in the 50s. I guess she was probably in her late 40s, 50s, ended up living into her mid-90s.
92 to be exact.
Yeah. Later started that group at Mount Shasta that you mentioned. And, of course, in between that, she was also involved with the group that included George Hunt Williamson and a few others that went to Peru and started once again, you could call it a cult. Maybe it was some type of vision quest that they engaged in to kind of start a retreat there in Peru that revolved around their interactions channeling the Space Brothers.
Yeah. So would you say that Dorothy Martin was one of your favorites, or you want to give us another favorite there, Adam?
Well, it's kind of like picking a favorite child. Not that I have children. I have cats. Or picking a favorite cats, because they all have
their own
personalities.
We know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, I get this question sometimes, and you can kind of put the contactees into different groups or subgroups too. Like who was the most humorous. Who was the most believable? Who was an outright hoaxer?
Right.
Conman, who might have had severe mental problems? So there's a lot of subcategories.
I don't think that severe mental problems actually preclude contact of some sort.
I wouldn't argue that either. I don't know for sure. I think it's possible that they can't, don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Right.
Yeah. people deal with these things in different ways, and
Right.
I think it goes all the way from complete making it up and there being no basis in any kind of external reality that anybody else can experience to maybe something that other people could see and experience. And I'm not sure where any of these people lie along the spectrum.
Right. Right.
There's that thin line between sanity and madness, that I kind of examine in other books, like my book on Carrie Thornley, where people may be dealing with some issues, paranoid schizophrenia and these type of things, but they have a heightened sense of awareness about things, or a heightened sense of paranoia, so they can tune into things that we can't tune into. Maybe, it's like a dial on a radio, or the volume on the radio. They don't have filter or control over that, so sometimes it's just too much information that drives them mad. So there's a thin line. That's the same thing they talk about with psychics or whoever that tune into other things, are able to tune into other wavelengths and frequencies that quote unquote normal people can't.
Well, in some cultures, the shamans are schizophrenics by Western psychological diagnoses.
Yeah, well, they got their antenna up, and so they live in that liminal state to be able to, this is my view anyway, to be able to see what's coming, or see what messages there might be, or see whatever the group needs them to see, and that madness is cherished and protected, and that they have to be a little bit crazy and not really on the same program as everybody else, so they can't do these. They can't provide the guidance that they're supposed to be providing, or at least that the group believes they're providing. I mean, I think these are. This kind of thing this job is given to artists in our society. They go out on the edge and bring back whatever weirdness, madness, insights that they can, because they're not hooked into the same reality the rest of us. And then that reality that we know is there, or a lot of us do, we don't have conversation with it. But if there's somebody else that has conversation with it and can bring us back a little bit of that, that's always needed in any society, any group.
I agree. I think that I 95% agree with what you just said, Greg. I would also say that the whole book, save a couple of entries, reminded me a lot of the idea of a cargo cult.
Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, it's. I think that after World War II, especially, which is what we're dealing with here in the sweet spot, as Adam was saying about the book, we're dealing with a counterculture, and there were other countercultures available, but this one I think was a counterculture based on spiritual precepts rather than a beatnik. Well, I guess they were kind of into Zen Buddhism and stuff, but it is based on something that is homegrown, and spoke to people in a way that these other communities hadn't, and it was available to them. And they didn't have to go to a church. They didn't have to go to any kind of established group. They made their own. They were kind of do-it-yourself religions, which they're all over the place now. But it was almost it was radical back then, to the point where, of course, the FBI and other authorities kind of kept an eye on a lot of the contactees, because they were just, for a lot of people, they were just too weird and suspicious.
Yeah, I really see the contactee movement as an alternative religion. And, there's seems to me parallels with, for instance, a lot of the contactees encountered entities early on that were very much the same, like Adamski met Orthon, and VanTassel met Solaganda, and several of them, that archetype of the ascended master.
Well, I got that a lot from the writing in the book, and I am certainly aware that both in the contactee movement and today's world in the near-death experiencers, that there are religious overtones. But what occurs to me, and tell me if you disagree, what occurs to me is that in any UFO, whether it be abductee or contactee or experiencer, the quote-unquote aliens or others, as I would prefer to call them, are thought to be lying to the people, sometimes giving false information. But on the other hand, can it be just the information is filtered through the brain or the mindset of the individual and colored by it? So if they see something that looks like a human being, we have to ask, are the others projecting that, or is that the easiest thing for these folks to see because it kind of goes along with their mindset, rather than are these entities outright lying? And are the entities good or bad or both? I mean, that's all in there.
Or neither. It's
or
just how
or
we,
don't really give
perceive them.
Don't really give a crap about us.
Yeah. And that was kind of another parameter of the book. I don't know how much Greg and I really discussed that, but with the
we kind of have the same viewpoint on stuff, so it was pretty easy to just kind of go ahead with, because he wrote nothing that surprised me. I was like, wow, I would have written it just like that, except not as good. I would have that reaction constantly reading his entries. So
I was going to say, with delineating between the contactees and abductees, what you had with that transition, wherever it happened, it kind of started happening in the 60s with Betty and Barney Hill, that she went from the more golden age of the contactees to the dark age, where that by the late 70s and 80s, the Orthon and those types, the ascended masters of peace and love, had turned into, in a lot of cases, what the abductees were experiencing, these grays or reptilians or entities that seemed very alien, as opposed to Orthon and the like, that were conducting all these medical experiments that seemed cruel and inhuman. So that's part of the transition, I think, difference between the old school contactees and the modern day abductees or experiencers, or whatever you want to call them.
Yes. And you do have some people that cross over, like are sort of both, like Charles Hickson. We recently interviewed Calvin Parker, who was the man who was reportedly abducted with Hickson, and that sort of spans both groups. Yes? Maybe?
Yeah, a few of the entries did span both groups, and the reason I read the Charles Hickson book. I guess it was written with somebody named Martinez. I think, I can't remember, Mendez. I think Charles Hickson's book, which came out in the early '80s, I believe. Mm-hmm. What kind of fascinated me about Hickson was, most people think of him as, this guy that was picked up. You can see my my avatar there on Skype.
Yes.
That's the Pascagoula, one of the Pascagoula entities. So it's one of my favorite cases.
Oh, okay. I actually, our trusty engineer Bill can see your avatar on Skype.
Oh,
I cannot.
Okay.
But are you talking about the Pascagoula creature of
yeah.
the Charles Hickson description, the guy with the long arms and the wrinkled body?
Yeah, and the little pointy things coming out of where the nose and ears would be. It looks like a Kachina doll to me.
Yes. William Mendez was the person who co-wrote with Hickson.
Yeah. But the point with Hickson was, when I read that book, I didn't realize that he was a repeater witness, which used to be kind of anathema in ufology. It's like, well, if somebody saw something more than once, then, they must be nuts or want publicity or whatever. So actually, when Hickson said this, it was kind of brave of him to admit it, that one, he had 2 or 3 more experiences, and one of them with his entire family, actually. And 2, with something very close, like sitting on the highway with lights and everything. But 2, he said he was getting messages mentally in every one of these cases. I don't know about the first one, but at least the 2 or 3 that came after. You have been chosen, to give a message, and it's a message of peace and brotherhood and all that, which is 100% right down the line what you would call a classic contactee message.
Yes.
So I thought that was really interesting that Hickson had that happen to him. And, he wasn't into the contactee movement or anything like that. He was kind of off on his own and had his own weird and basically terrifying experience. And then he, or whatever it was that had contact with him, or both, came to this kind of peace with it. Couched in kind of almost I don't want to say messianic, but kind of we think what all the UFO people say. Things are messed up and they need to be fixed, and you're part of that solution. So if everybody thought that way, maybe things wouldn't be as bad as they are. But
yeah, well, there's that.
Yeah, so Charles Hickson did. When you had Calvin on, I don't think he had repeat experiences, as far as I know. Oh, he did?
He did have some repeat experiences as well. And I would have to say that he came off to me, both in his book and in speaking to him, as 100% genuine, just like salt of the earth kind of a guy. As does somebody else who had a very similar experience, who I had on, name of Terry Lovelace. And I think the same thing of Travis Walton seems 100% sincere. Now, if I was to say I knew what happened to any of these people, I would be lying. But I would say, on the other hand, that something definitely did happen to all 4 of those guys. By that I mean Hickson and Parker and Travis Walton and Terry Lovelace. Something definitely did happen. And something very similar happened to Terry Lovelace and the person he was with, who is now unfortunately deceased, as what happened to Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker. So that is, it's sort of interesting to contemplate when we hear about people like Jacques Vallée and the people from, not to be incredibly go into these people particularly. I'm thinking, all of a sudden my mind went blank. The people who are now promoting some form of disclosure with the rock star from Blink-182, Tom DeLonge, and that group. Not DeLonge particularly, but they profess to have metal that is kind of different than we find on Earth. And the fact that Jacques Vallée says something about it lends a little bit of credence to that, as far as I'm concerned. But I don't know what exactly is going on there with those folks, and I don't want to get incredibly into that right now.
No. You should read and have on Diana Walsh-Pasolka, because she also talks about. Oh, did you? That's right, you did.
Did it?
Didn't she talk about those? Now we're getting totally away from the book, but I'm sure she talked about the metal pieces she saw too.
Yes, and yes, she did speak to that to some extent, and I went with her to a place not so much about the UFOs, but kind of about how people don't really know what reality is anymore because of you see a movie like.
Oh yeah.
And then you think that that's the reality, when the reality may have been something different, and then.
Your memory conflates it, especially if it's something that was frightening, exciting. You like it, you hate it, whatever. It becomes conflated as an actual memory with other memories that you have. Yeah, she talks about that a bit in the book.
I haven't seen
it's relevant to the contactee thing, too, actually.
Yes. I haven't seen the Project Blue Book series at all yet. I'll probably try to take a look at it at some point, but I would imagine that is what's going to happen with that people will see that and see that for the reality. While it may be somewhat similar to the reality, it's clearly not the reality.
Yeah, there's a kernel of truth to it. There was a J. Allen Hynek, but I hear, parts of that program are pretty exaggerated.
But what is reality at all?
Well, I heard people complaining about that show. I haven't seen it, and my only answer is if they produced what UFO researchers would want to be on TV, nobody would watch it.
Yeah.
Well, there's that.
Spending hundreds of hours going through some files and sitting there reading stuff.
Well, something close to that. Well, why didn't you talk about this? Why didn't you? So, well, they have to make a story.
Yeah.
And maybe it's inaccurate and outright made up and whatever. I'm sure I wouldn't be happy with it either. But that's what Hollywood does. It creates a story out of something that's not a story just to keep your interest. And they could probably do less exaggeration, a little bit more expository, information or a dramatization of some of the things that happened to Hynek. That'd be great. But like I said, it would not be put on TV, and probably nobody would watch it because those people know how to keep people's interest.
Yeah,
ufologists, for the most part, do not.
Well. Yeah, I guess I will try to watch at least an episode of it. I don't have a television, but I will try to get that on the internet at some point, just as a point of research, so to speak. But what I'm sure about is that what Diana Walsh-Pasulka discusses in the central part of her book, not the beginning, not the end, but the center portion, is basically that we won't remember 200 years from now, if we so live that long. I don't mean you and I will live that long, but if there are still human beings, which I doubt, there will probably have a distorted view of what went on in terms of Project Blue Book. Not that it will matter a great deal 200 years from now, but their view will be distorted by Hollywood.
Yeah, well, everything's distorted by history.
Yes.
And just, as you said with Diana, it's even more so by seeing something that is visual, that you kind of experience in a way that's not just read or heard or whatever, but seen as a visual medium. I'm trying to think. I don't think there's ever been a major Hollywood movie made about any contactee stories at all, which would be kind of interesting. I mean, I'm sure they'd completely mess it up and we'd hate it, but it might be fun, do the Raelian story. That might be kind of interesting.
Yes, well, I think probably to do the Raelian story, you might have to wait until what's his name, Verhillion? I can't even say his name. I don't speak French.
I don't either. Claude Vorilhon.
Yeah, okay.
Good job.
He would have to probably be passed, or you would get a lawsuit. But I think it would be wonderful if the two of you did a treatment for Hollywood. You might get rich.
I seriously doubt that, but there's nothing's out of the question.
Might
is the key word there. Yeah.
Might.
It'd be mighty difficult.
Well, if you had a good showbiz lawyer, I would suggest that you invest in a good showbiz lawyer. I want to tell you my favorite person, I think, in the book is the gentleman down in, was it Mississippi or Louisiana, who ran a trailer park, and he built the monument outside to the UFO that he saw, and he let people stay on his trailer park longer than even when they hadn't paid, and he just seemed like a really nice person.
Yeah, that was John Reeves in Florida, as I recall.
Okay, it was Florida. All those states all run into.
Yeah, he seemed like a genuinely nice fellow. And yeah, he had an encounter out there in the sticks. He was walking along one day and saw a creature come out of a ship. Had a so it was kind of a funny sighting that he was startled, and he Reeves was, and so he turned around, tried to hightail it out, and fell over some brush, and glasses fell off his face, and the kindly alien or robot, it was hard to tell, came over, and John Reeves thought that he was going to kill him or something, but the alien bent over and picked up his glasses and put him back on him, then took a I know what had startled John Reeves. Initially the ET taken what looked like a photograph of Reeves, and it sent a flash and blinded him, and then that's when he stumbled and dropped his glasses. But anyway, after that encounter, the ET took off in his ship and left behind some type of writing, hieroglyphs of some sort that later on Project Blue Book investigators looked at and determined it was a hoax. So that's kind of the contradiction you have with a lot of these guys. You know, he seemed like a generally kind-hearted fellow, but there was some elements of hoaxery going on there, perhaps. And as you noted, he had a huge made a saucer monument in his front yard that later the local authorities had him tear down, and it became kind of a place different people would visit, such as, I guess I wrote in the book, Tuesday Weld, for instance. Jimmy Page came out to
Pat Boone.
meet with him.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we had Pat Boone too. And I came across John Reeves. He was kind of a late addition, and I encountered him through Douglas Curran's book, In Advance of the Landing, which is kind of an inspiration to both Greg and I. Mr. Curran wrote the introduction to the book, and Doug Curran went around the country in the 80s and talked to a lot of the contactees, but also took a lot of photos of homemade saucers people had in their front yards, and kind of the rocket architecture that grew out of the 50s and 60s.
How about Jackie Gleason's saucer home? That he lived for a while in a home that looked like a flying saucer might look if you were to do it. Did he take a picture of that? I guess you might not know.
I don't know if that's in Doug's book. I don't think so, but yeah, I've seen pictures, and it was awesome. Apparently, Jackie Gleason had a huge UFO library as well.
Yes, he did. He had, at the time of his death, and I've said this before on the show, so please forgive me, listeners, if you've heard this before. Jackie Gleason, at the time of his death, had the largest library of paranormal subjects in the world. Known. You know, somebody.
Do we know what happened to it?
I think that his wife might still be living, so we could always ask her, I guess.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I think she might be living.
I also read somewhere that, I'm not sure if it was that in that house or his saucer house, you know, he liked to drink a bit, so he had like 5 or 6 different wet bars set up throughout the house, but he only had one bathroom, which
oh dear.
pointed out was an oversight.
Especially if he liked to drink beer, it would be a big oversight if he had people over and they're all drinking beer, needing bathrooms. Yeah. But you do mention Jackie Gleason. I don't know which one of you wrote exactly what. But
yes,
he was mentioned several times as being calling up Long John Nebel, or being on, was it Carson, with one of them, and kind of making a bet if could they produce what they said.
Yeah, he was a pretty hardcore researcher, it seems, you know, given the fact of that library. He was genuinely genuinely interested in the topic, but I don't think he suffered fools gladly, or anybody thought was trying to pull a fast one, he would call them on the carpet about it. And that's what he did with George King of the Ethereans on one of the episodes of Long John Nebel. In fact, he went on Long John Nebel a couple of times and busted the chops of different people making one claim or another.
Yeah.
Now, I guess I think that Greg would kind of agree with this from having previous conversations with him, but I don't know what you would say about this, Adam, that some people could have some form of experience and be, just a common person without too much money, like a working class individual, and not necessarily brilliant thought patterns, and they might they might decide, hey, maybe I can sell this in one way or another, and then sort of invent things to come.
Well, yeah, I think that's happened with a few of the contactees. You come up with a story, and they might not even be literate, and but they could weave a good tale or had some experience. I think, for instance, in the case of Truman Bethurum, he had a ghostwriter for his book, and I know George Adamski as well had a ghostwriter. And you look at the Pascagoula. How do you say that?
Pascagoula.
I mean, none of those guys were obviously literary types.
Yeah, well,
but
they
I don't
would
think I don't think they were making it up either. But.
No, absolutely not. The guys at Pascagoula, something happened, something big happened to them. I'm quite sure of that.
I don't think they're making it up.
No.
I'm not absolutely certain about any of this stuff.
Well, they had other witnesses there. I mean, as much as you can be certain of anything, like you expect there to, you expect to view the New York skyline on my way home, and I expect to see the Empire State Building. But in any case, I think it's highly unlikely that they were making it up. Something happened. I don't know what they think happened, but I'm quite sure something happened. That's my opinion anyway.
You brought up Travis Walton, and that's exactly how I've always felt about him, that he comes across as 100% sincere in his story, and there were multiple witnesses, and a lot of odd things happened too that were hard to explain. Something strange happened to Travis and the people involved with that. Who knows it for sure exactly what it was? And then you get as these stories evolve over the years, you have movies made about them, and different people writing, and the stories kind of evolve from what they originally were.
Yeah, I got in a discussion with Peter Robbins once. I think it's on one of my shows. Yeah, it was. We were at Roswell year before last, in 2017, and I had Peter Robbins was there, and I said, well, what do you think happened to Travis? And he says, I think he was taken by aliens in a ship somewhere. And I said, how do you know that? He said, well, that's what he told me, and there's witnesses. I said, no, the only witness was Travis. The witnesses saw Travis get zapped by something.
Right.
That's all we have. And he says, well, then you think he's lying? I said, no, I don't think he's lying, but we just don't know what happened in those few days when he wasn't around. Well, how could he survive? And I said, there's a guy that was on Coast actually last year, or there was at that time, who had been found living in Maine, out in the middle of nowhere. And they asked him how he lived through the winters, with the freezing winters. And he said he would just get up and exercise and walk around until it was warm enough that he could go to sleep. So, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Travis Walton could have been zapped by something and then been in some weird state for a while. Now, does that mean, where does reality start, and, physical reality or mental reality or whatever you want to call it, and what else, and what other people can experience end? I have no idea. But I think Travis is telling the story as he sees it.
Absolutely.
But if we were sitting there, standing with him after all of his friends took off in a panic, I don't know what we would have seen. maybe he wandered off down the path. I have no idea.
No, we don't exactly know. I think that my thought might be somewhere between yours and Peter Robbins. I would say that there was something in the sky. They all saw something in the sky, and something from the sky zapped Travis, although it's not really clear what that something was and whether Travis went up in it or not. But I would say that what he saw may have clearly been colored by the hairless ape brain. And I'm pleased, Travis, don't get me wrong. I'm not calling you.
We know what you're saying.
Okay, that's you fine. Know what I'm saying, but I hope Travis does. Should he ever listen to it?
I'm being completely agnostic about it. I'm not saying that he made anything up or that he was delusional. No. I'm completely agnostic. I'm just saying there are so many possibilities there, and just say he was taken by aliens on a ship. It's like, well, there's
maybe
that's
like,
another.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that's another odd part of the story, because in one telling of his experience, as I recall, he was on a ship and there were some humans there, like in uniforms.
Right.
Earth people.
Earth looking, yeah. Well, that's a common contactee thing too, actually.
Yeah.
Well, there's that part of it seems sort of explainable in my mind, simply by the idea that a person, a human being, an angry ape here, like us, has certain preconceived ideas in their mind about what 4D reality is. And there's a thought that either our minds are twisting what we see, or whoever the others are projecting something to us that they think that we might be able to understand.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose so, but there's no way of checking on that. I mean, that's a guess.
Yes, it is a guess.
We can look at how we do. And I do think there's something that, I mean, people say, oh, you're so skeptical. It's like, no, I do think there's actually something that's not human that communicates with some people sometimes.
Right.
Past that, we start going on assumptions, because you give the example of, I can't remember what you said earlier, but what it made me think of was, you can't make a comparison of somebody's memories to something that nobody knows anything about. Right. Like if somebody says, I remember a murder, well, we know how murders happen for the most part. But if they say, I remember being taken on a ship somewhere, well, that's not something that really happens to everybody, most people every day. Well, murders don't either, but you know what I'm getting at here.
Yes, so I do.
Yeah, you can't start saying, well, this is real in a reality way that we think of reality, because there's no way to produce it on demand, really. Well, that doesn't mean it's not real. It doesn't mean it's not, people didn't have these experiences, but we're looking at it through means that are not normal to us.
There's one situation, I think I'm going to bring it up here now, even though it's not about your book, and I want to get back to your book at some point.
Yes, let's please get back to the book. I'm sorry.
No, but I gotta bring this up because you said this. There is a situation involving a Skip Atwater who was tasking remote viewers. It has to do with UFOs. He was tasking remote viewers about what happened on a ship that was on the east coast of South America. It was a military vehicle ship, I believe, and it was, I think, an Argentinian vessel, but it was then there were like, I don't know, I'm going to say multitudes of guys on it, like over 30 men on the ship. I think it was all men, in fact. And so Skip Atwater, tasked a number of remote viewers just with a number, like a 5-digit number that was supposed to be having something to do with the ship. It was selected at random. The remote viewers who were tasked with this viewing did not know where in the world or out of the world. Like it could have been on Venus in 1842, or it could be in the future in Maine. They had no idea where or how this event took place. They didn't know it was about a ship or Argentina or anything. They were just given a series of 4 numbers, and separately they remote viewed what it was, and all of them pretty much, and some of them people who I know, Paul Smith, what's his name, McMonigal, Joe McMonigal, a couple of other people were all tasked separately with looking at this number 3546, let's say, and that's all they had, and they all came up with the guys were whooped up into space. They didn't even know there were guys involved or a ship was involved. They all got, it was a ship and there were men on it and they were taken into space. So it is a difficult conundrum. We don't know how they got that information, but it's interesting that they all came up with the same or similar sort of answers.
Yeah, of something that can't be proven externally. So who knows what you do with that? But it's a very interesting data point. It's
compelling, I would say.
Yeah.
But getting back to your book, I know what Don Ecker would answer for this. He would say Guy Kirkwood was the most notorious of all these fellows and ladies in the book. But in your opinion, who was the most phony, fake, and outright schemer?
Oh, geez. I really don't know. I mean, we didn't include Sean Morton in there, so I can't say him.
Yeah, well, he's in jail now, isn't he? We hope.
I know. I went to the trial, part of it.
Yeah, I know. That was cool.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody where I just have this like, oh, God, what a... because the ones that weren't, they were so... for the most part, they were fairly gentle. But I don't know, maybe Buck Nelson, possibly. I don't know.
Well, I'd point to Harold Burney as a straight out con man who basically started.
That's right.
This was like in the during the early 50s when the whole contactee movement started rolling, that he cashed in on it by coming up with a false tale that he had actually, as part of his corporation and other industrialists, he had gone to Venus and been recruited by the Venusians to work on some projects where they could bring alien technology, or to be more specific, Venusian technology to Earth.
Old, it's new.
What's that?
I get you there, Greg.
I always quote Marlene Dietrich in Touch of Evil. At one point, she says, "He's so old, it's new," and I think of that all the time when this stuff comes up. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so, yeah, he got investors to invest in his phony corporation. He wrote a book that I don't know if it was ever published or anybody has seen, called something like 2 Weeks. Yeah, it was called 2 Weeks on Venus. And part of his
that's my band, dude.
Part of his scam was he wanted to desert his wife while he was at it too.
Yeah.
And so his wife received a letter one day from the prince. I can't even say his name. The prince on Venus, saying that Harold Burney, her husband, had died and he was laying in state in Venus. And so that
Prince
was
Useles. I see.
And so that was his excuse for deserting his wife. They later tracked him down, and he was convicted on wire fraud and some other things for bamboozling different investors with his Venusian tale. And yeah.
That sounds very familiar to something in the present, and I can't exactly think what it is, but it has something to do with investors and UFO technology. I'll leave it there. No, this fellow, Bernie, he seemed like quite a scoundrel. Absolutely. And
well, yeah, there's a few.
Yeah, Adam wrote that one, which is why I didn't remember. Yeah, that's a good one.
Sometimes it takes my brain a bit to engage, but there was also Schmidt. I'm forgetting his
Reinhold Schmidt?
Yes.
Reinhold Schmidt. Yeah,
Yes.
he was apparently he was convicted too of fleecing little old ladies out of their retirement savings. He claimed that he had done a flyover. You know, he befriended some Venusians or vice versa, and they took him on a flight around Earth where they were able to find some different, I guess it was mining deposits that everybody would get rich off of. So he got investors in that scheme. And once again, it was similar to Harold Burney. These were senior citizens, elderly women that he would bamboozle. I guess Schmidt traveled around the country to different flying saucer clubs. And anyway, eventually the authorities caught wind of what he was up to, and he ended up doing a 5-year stint in prison. So there was a few of them, the Harold Berneys and the Reinhold Schmidts and Otis T. Carr.
Yeah, that was one.
The one thing that was interesting to me is that the two young sisters, they look like almost teenagers. They may have been in their 20s, and they were contactees, and then they actually did really disappear. Any further news on them?
I'll have to ask Tim Beckley. He's the one who told me they had disappeared. Now, they might have just left the saucer scene, he talked about them as they were older ladies, more like they're in their 40s and 50s when they had they were the Mitchell sisters, Helen and Betty.
Yes, they look young in their picture, but maybe they weren't as young as their picture.
And they had encounters with Martians supposedly, and they had I think Beckley actually knew them. They were around the St. Louis area. And that was the last, he framed it as they had disappeared, but who knows? A lot of times
perhaps
people just
not.
move on. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Because that was sort of interesting to me if they actually did physically disappear from sight. That I would hope they didn't come to any bad end, like with somebody like Reinhold Schmidt there or some other person. But one other thing that occurs to me, and I did mention it briefly at the beginning of the show, is that some of the contactees remind me greatly of today's people who have NDEs, because it is cast in a religious perspective to some of them, and there are certain parts of their stories that are similar, and clearly, the people who had near-death experiences, clearly they did, in fact, cease to breathe and a heartbeat, so that they were flatlining. And like some of the contactees, particularly some of the women that were mentioned by both of you as perhaps one of your favorites, they did have psychic experiences, like the NDE people. They see what's going on in another room while they're dead, and it is, in fact, verified by others. So do you see any sort of coherence there between the two groups? Or aren't you familiar with the NDE people? I'm sorry if I brought this up out of the blue.
I'm familiar with the NDE experience. I don't know if I'm familiar with the NDE people.
Well,
as I guess there's NDE celebrities. I mean, I guess you would put I don't know about Bob Monroe, but God, who's a big NDE celebrity? I'm not sure right now.
There's a woman with who has a Middle Eastern last name, and I can't place her name right now. She's a woman, I would say, seems to be in her 50s, and she had terminal cancer. And when she died, she had a spiritual experience. She became a much nicer person, and she also had no cancer after the experience. So there are certain, and that's kind of a pattern that happens with some NDEers, that either they're given some psychic knowledge, which is verifiable, or they're cured from their disease if they were dying of the disease, and that's why they died, not just had a heart failure, which is something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see the parallel there with sort of transformation, that there's a change and their life's course, they're on a different path now, which happens to much of the NDE people. It's like, well, I don't have to fear death anymore, because some of them, might believe that there is no death. I saw beyond the veil.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, with many contactees, there's that transformative experience that, they feel certain now that there's life on other planets. So it's, much again, a religious experience in a sense.
Spiritual, certainly.
Spiritual, yeah.
So just in sort of conclusion, because I don't want to keep you guys forever. You might have something else to do with your lives this evening. I can't imagine what could be more important than shattered reality, but that there might be. Perhaps you just want to mention your books, one at a time, and say what you're doing, so you get a little advertisement out of it. After all, I so much appreciate you coming on, the both of you, and your generosity and mailing me the book and everything, which I love. I really have to say it's the most entertaining, fun UFO book I have ever read, because some of the things...
I love that comment. That's great.
Yeah. I haven't heard that one yet. It's people are like, it seems like academic. Are you making fun of them? Do you believe them? Nobody has just said, oh, hey, it's just fun, which is kind of what happened when we wrote it. I just had fun writing.
Good, because I had fun reading it. And, sometimes, just for instance, Ruth Norman, a.k.a. the Archangel Uriel. And we see this lady, and it's precious. She has a costume, and there's some guy standing behind her in a UFO. And Greg is there with... a Unarius member, Leanne, and Leanne is looking admiring at the handsome young Greg, and it's just great. It's a great one, yes.
Yeah, the photos really enhance it, and I tried to find photos for every contactee. Didn't quite make it, but it gives you just more of a sense of who they were, to go along with their stories, to actually see actual photos of these different characters.
And my compliments to Douglas Curran, because he's done a marvelous job with, I guess that's where you got some of the photos from, yes.
Some of the photos, yeah. The Unarius photo of Uriel, that's one of Douglas's photos. So he was generous enough to let me use whatever I asked for. I got initially, I just, I approached him about doing the intro to the book, and he said, yeah. And I thought, oh, that's great. And could I use a couple photos? And then a few months later, Doug, can I use a few more photos? And kept going back to him, and he had no problem. It was great.
Yeah, the book was built around photos. Adam said we have access to all these pictures from that people have either not seen, or they haven't seen in a long time, or they haven't been really that public, and that was the basis for the book. I mean, let's feature all these images, but also, another one of our rules, a couple of them. One, you have to find we have to find something new on these people. You can't just regurgitate things people have said before. Do some real, actual original research. And two, that it was that we find new people, and probably half, or maybe a third of the people in the book either knew very little about or had never heard of them before. And that was a couple of the goals of the book, which I think we accomplished, because it's the kind of book I'd want to read. So,
well, I was very thrilled to read it, and I would just say that you both did a great job. But do you want to mention any of your other books and projects and stuff? It's up to you, guys.
You go first,
sure.
Greg.
Let's see. The most recent one was It Defies Language, which you mentioned. That currently is my favorite because I get to spout off about all kinds of stuff. Of course, it's Project Beta, Weird California. Yeah, you mentioned them all. So the only real ad I have is listen to my show. It gets posted when I feel like posting a show. It's not in any it's not on any schedule. When I have somebody on, when I have somebody that I figure is interesting to me and I can have an interesting interview, I do it. So if you stick with me, maybe you'll hear some fun stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I do listen. And
thank you.
You are one of my teachers, if you will. I mean, between you and Howard Hughes and a few other people out there that I do listen to on a regular basis. And there are some out there that I listen to decide what not to do. And
That's valuable too.
They shall go nameless.
Yeah.
In any case, thank you both. But first, Adam gets to talk now, right? He gets to say his stuff, his books, etc., his projects. What's up next for Adam Gorightly?
Another UFO book, and Greg has seen this, or an early draft of it, and it has to do. It has to do with more than UFO disinformation, but that's a part of it. So that book is done and in the can, and maybe we'll see it this year. It'll be published by the Daily Grail. So that's upcoming, and that'll probably be the last UFO book I ever write. Who knows? But I've been working on both of these books for a number of years. I've written quite a bit about the quote unquote spoof religion Discordianism, book about Carrie Thornley, the prankster and the conspiracy, and one on the history of Discordianism called Historia Discordia. And there's a website called historiadiscordia.com. And then recently launched a website called Chasing UFOs.
I'll have to take a look at that one.
I'm trying to remember the exact title, but if you look Chasing UFOs, Gorightly, you'll find that site. And I'm kind of using that to promote the A is for Adamski by having some excerpts and other UFO writings I've done. So that's kind of new, and that's about it. I'm also going to be in a independent motion picture.
Oh
yeah.
That's going to be there's going to be a premiere on the 20th of this month in Raton, New Mexico, and it's called The Hill and the Hole. It's based on a Fritz Leiber story. It's kind of how would you describe this thing? It's kind of a ghost story, Twin Peakish type of endeavor, and I play a character by the name of Roger Person, who has his hands in a lot of stuff.
Interesting. Wow. So you are very multi-talented, as it were. And I forgot one thing that I wanted to say. We did have one question from one listener, which was for Adam, and that was what he thought about the other book that was sort of conspiratorial on Laurel Canyon. I'm trying to remember the guy's name, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
Dave Mcgowan.
Yes, that was the question from our listener.
I'm trying to remember the exact title, but Dave Mcgowan actually passed on a couple of years ago.
Yes, most misfortunately, yes.
And he had started that book actually a decade ago or so on his website. He's writing installments of this Laurel Canyon series, and the premise of it was basically that the 60s counterculture and specifically the rock music scene had been infiltrated by intelligence agencies, I guess, to kind of undermine the 60s counterculture. And one of the things he pointed to was a lot of these different rock stars of that period, they ended up in Laurel Canyon. And I guess during World War II, in Laurel Canyon, there had been based a secret intelligence operation connected to World War II, where they were developing different propaganda films or whatever. And Mcgowan went on to theorize, or what he suggested, it was an ongoing intelligence operation. A lot of the rock stars of that period, their parents had been involved in World War II and as intelligence officers. Of course, the argument to that is a lot of those rock stars, they were born during that period, and a lot of people were involved in the war effort. Now, he finally came out with the book, I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago, and highly entertaining book. I don't necessarily buy into the thesis, but it did real well at the time for a conspiracy book, which kind of aggravated him when he started seeing, he'd self-published his earlier stuff, but with this book, he got a major publisher behind it, and it was really selling like hotcakes. And but he was kind of aggravated when he actually saw the royalties. When you work with the real publisher, you don't make a lot. But he was getting a measure of fame during that period. He was approached by Hollywood for a documentary on that series. Then the next thing I hear, he has cancer, and he was battling that. Then he died not soon after. So probably within a year or so of the publication of that book, he passed on. It was really fast acting cancer that overtook him.
Well, yeah.
But I guess to top it all off, it's great reading for a conspiracy book, very entertaining, one of those books that will suck you into it, but I don't necessarily buy into his premise behind the book.
Well, thank you for that, because one of our listeners did see that you were coming on and did send in that question, so we appreciate your answering that. And once again, before we say goodbye to Adam Gorightly and Greg Bishop and their book, A is for Adamski, The Golden Age of UFO Contactees, with forward by Douglas Curran, who took some of the photos. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
And we'll say adios, and I hope to speak to both of you again, either on the air or off the air. Take care. Bye-bye. So, Shattered Reality listeners, that was a very interesting show from my point of view, at least from my eardrums. Enjoyed talking to these two guys. So if you have any comments, we will be glad to answer them. If you have any guest suggestions, we will be glad to consider them. And please like us on Facebook, like us on shatteredrealitypodcast.wordpress.com and shatteredrealitypodcast.com. We are also on Stitcher, we're on YouTube, we're on iTunes, and probably places I don't even know about. So thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in, and we will be back in a couple of weeks with episode 84, and we have some very good guests coming our way in the next month and a half. And I'm not going to preview them right now because I don't know what order they're going to appear in. So I don't want to tell you that Mr. X is next when it actually turns out to be Miss Y. So just as a final statement, goodbye from Shattered Reality.